Cornerstone presents Into the Deep. If God is good, why is there evil in the world? Here we have 4 propositions. God exists, God is all-powerful, God is all good, and evil exists. At first glance, they don't seem to go together, because if God is all-powerful, then he could prevent evil from happening. And if he is all good, then he would want to prevent evil from happening. If evil exists, does a good and all-powerful God exist? We are briefly going to look at 10 easy answers the world has come up with to this very question, and why they don't make sense. If you want to dive deeper into these answers, we will share with you some resources that will assist you in that deep dive. The first 3 answers fall under the category of denying the reality that God exists. Atheism. Evil exists because there is no God. But in saying the universe wasn't created by an all-powerful and all-knowing God, there has been an infinite amount of time for the universe to evolve. Shouldn't it already be perfect by now, with no evil present then? And if there is no God, no infinite goodness, where did we get the standard of goodness from? Demythologism, the fairy tale God. Demythologism says that there is no God, and the Bible is true mythically, but not reality. But only a real God can remove real guilt, though. Psychologism, the subjective God. Here we make up God for ourselves. What's true for me doesn't have to be true for you. But if everyone believed this, we would be in trouble, because mankind has problems mankind cannot solve. The next 3 answers fall under the category of denying God's power. Old paganism. There are many gods who are weak and bribable, which explains the evil in the world. But there hasn't been a philosopher who defended pagan polytheism understood literally. Those that believe in polytheism reconcile God and evil by weakening God to gods. New paganism. This belief holds that whatever science doesn't detect doesn't exist. The only God is nature and the laws of nature. But death is nature's trump card. It takes the supernatural to trump death. Dualism. The belief in one good and one evil God. Neither has all of the power. But evil needs good because evil is an absence of good. Good does not need evil. God does not need Satan, but Satan needs God. The next 3 answers fall under the category of denying God's goodness. Satanism. The worship of Satan as God. Evil is powerful in the world because Satan is in charge. But again, evil cannot be greater than good. How could finite power conquer infinite power? Pantheism. This belief is everything in general and nothing in particular. Evil is part of the blob God too. But this would mean that Hitler is God, as well as Christ. Deism. Pantheism denies God's transcendence, and deism denies God's immanence. They believe that God created the world and walked away, leaving us alone. This final answer denies the very existence of evil. Idealism. Goodness and evil are things you cannot see, so they are subjective feelings of the observer, rather than the quality of actions in someone's character. They believe sickness, suffering, and death are illusions people believe in because they don't have insight or true faith. If all of these answers are false, what is the correct answer? Could all 4 propositions really be true? Are you ready to dive into the deep? If God is good, why is there evil in the world? God is good, is all-powerful, and evil exists. All 4 of these are true. If God eliminated evil from the world, we would have no free will at all. Think about parents. They love their child unconditionally, even when they make bad choices. If they took all choice away from their child, there would be no bad choice to make. Say the parents are tired of cleaning up a messy house with toys being everywhere and not where they should be. A parent could take away all of the toys from the child, leaving them with no toys to play with. The child may then make a mess with their clothes, trying to figure out what to wear. So the parent would take all of their clothing away. Solves the mess, right? Then the child makes a mess at the meal. So the parent takes away all of the food to solve that. Does that sound like a loving parent? No. The loving parent continues to allow the child to make these choices and teach them lessons when they make a bad choice. God is the perfect parent and does this better than our own parents do or did. He allows the evil in the world to overwhelm him out of his unconditional love for us. God is not passive to our pain and suffering that comes from evil being allowed to exist in the world. He enters into this pain and suffering to transform it. It is love that transforms pain and suffering. There are many different examples in the lives of parents and family members of suffering out of love for the other. This kind of suffering is more bearable since it has meaning. If you cannot attach meaning to suffering, you will go into despair. We also see this in athletes. They are willing to suffer through the pain of training and competing out of the love of the sport that they are training and competing in. If we don't attach meaning to suffering, we would think that St. Paul had lost his mind in his letter to the Colossians. Now I rejoice in what I am suffering for you, and I fill up in my flesh what is still lacking in regard to Christ's afflictions, for the sake of his body, which is the church. We can rejoice in suffering once we attach meaning to it. Suffering without Jesus hurts, but suffering with Jesus can change the world. But what did St. Paul mean when he said, I fill up in my flesh what is still lacking in regard to Christ's afflictions? Wasn't Christ's death on the cross perfect and complete? What could be lacking? Many theologians and church fathers have looked at this same verse. Christ offers his body, the church, a sliver of the cross. Through each of our slivers of the cross, we are able to be co-redeemers. This makes sense because he healed when he was on earth and gave his disciples the power to heal and forgive. He fed us on earth and continues to feed us today through the Eucharist. It only makes sense that he would want us to suffer for the sake of others. This is the love he wants to share with others. Love your neighbor as yourself. We suffer when it has meaning for us, but Christ is calling us to suffer out of love for the sake of others. Love is perfected through suffering. Love turns suffering into sacrifice. Jesus endured it perfectly, and his body continues to say, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Nothing given to God is ever wasted, especially our suffering for the sake of others. As Catholics, we often hear, offer it up, and may have said it ourselves. But what does this common saying really mean? What man meant for evil, God meant for good. Like we said before, athletes train and suffer because they know why they are doing it and love their sport. Offering suffering up for others helps them toward heaven. Our sin does the exact opposite. St. Padre Pio said, in this life, Jesus does not ask you to carry the heavy cross with him, but a small piece of his cross, a piece that consists of human suffering. Don't waste your cross. Use it to draw closer to Christ and to help others get closer to Christ as well. The cross is the inner law of the universe. It is God's reversal of evil. God destroyed evil by letting it destroy him. St. John Paul II said, the cross means there is no shipwreck without hope. There is no dark without dawn, nor storm without haven. Jesus was born into chaos and messiness and transformed it into healing. Jesus' suffering was enough to make my pain redemptive suffering. Don't waste the slivers of the cross you have been given in life. Use them to help others grow closer to Christ through the messiness and chaos of this world, because God is good. God is all-powerful, and evil exists. Want to dive further into this month's topic? Here are the resources used to make this video. The book, Making Sense Out of Suffering by Peter Kreeft, and the following YouTube videos. When You Suffer by Jeff Cavins, Making Sense Out of Suffering by Scott Hahn, Value and Meaning of Suffering by Scott Hahn, The Meaning of Suffering by Father Mike Schmitz, The Real Answer to Why God Allows Suffering by Father Mike Schmitz, Redemptive Suffering by Matthew Leonard, and Suffering by Venerable Fulton Sheen. Cornerstone. Follow, guide, lead.